Gentlemen, welcome to panel discussions related to Central Asia regional cooperation. I would like to inform that all our presentations will be in Russian. Thus, who needs please use interpretation service, and I will switch to Russian language.
Good day, dear participants of our forum. I welcome you at the panel session dedicated to the regional market of electric power. I am working for USAID Regional Mission. I'm working for 20 years here on energy projects in different areas, both regulation, education, energy savings, energy efficiency, and regional cooperation. I am very pleased to welcome you all at this panel session. Before we start, several technical issues. All our presentations will be recorded, so you can watch them at the website of the forum at the end of the day. And we have simultaneous interpretation services and also technical support group. If you have any problems, technical problems, you can contact through the chat box our technical group, then they will try to help you. Today is the 10th forum, but for the first time we are discussing the issue of energy. But I think many of our people will agree that the energy is the moving force of economic development. It's undoubtful that without energy sector, no consumption, no production, no transportation, it would be possible. And even today's forum wouldn't be possible if there was no power supply. We know the direct dependency between GDP and the energy consumption growth. American Agency on International Development and the government of the United States of America understands this really well and provides global support to all countries in development of the sustainable economic development, rational use of energy resources, and expanding use of renewable and clean sources, and supports regional cooperation. Due to that, I would like to give the word to the General Counsel of United States of America in Kazakhstan. Please, can you turn on the record?
Добрый день, меня зовут Эрик Майер, я являюсь генеральным консулом США в Алматы в Казахстане. От имени правительства Соединенных Штатов Америки для меня это честь и удовольствие поприветствовать вас во время этой
I am delighted to take part in the 10th Annual Central Asia Trade Forum. I would like to thank our Central Asian government partners, as well as the many international organizations who have supported this event. Central Asian countries are currently working to overcome the economic challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. Recovery efforts will be enhanced by increased cooperation with neighboring countries and further integration with international markets. The United States is committed to further regional integration and addressing development challenges in Central Asia. As outlined in our current strategy for Central Asia, these regional initiatives bring the Central Asian countries together while providing them with tools to maintain individual sovereignty and preserve economic independence. This commitment is not just words. Over the last 8 years, the United States Agency for International Development has committed $94 million to help Central Asian governments to accelerate the transition to cost-competitive, low-emission, climate-resilient economies, primarily through supporting clean and renewable energy technologies and energy efficiency. The result of these projects will be affordable, clean, sustainable electricity that will improve the lives of Central Asian citizens and bring income to the region's governments. To accomplish this, we have 3 overarching goals: electricity market reforms, clean energy development, and increasing regional connectivity. This third goal, increasing regional connectivity, is the subject of today's panel and arguably more important than ever. The U.S. government supports increased energy sector connectivity and the creation of an economically viable regional electricity market that will enhance electricity trade across the region, provide supply security, and promote and sustain economic growth. Our programs aim to leverage a diversity of energy sources backed by open and transparent policies and regulations to ensure cost-effective electricity for the people of Central Asia. Critically important in our modern world is the work in which we aim to digitalize the energy sector while ensuring robust cybersecurity. USAID and the U.S. government aren't working alone in this area. We partner with Central Asian governments, the World Bank, the Asian Development Bank, the European Union, and other development partners to increase sustainable electricity trade. A good example of this multi-donor cooperation is the CASA 1000 project. USAID, with other donors, supports this large-scale transmission project that will deliver clean hydroelectric power from Tajikistan and the Kyrgyz Republic to Afghanistan and Pakistan. This massive project is a great example of how countries and the international community can come together to solve some of the region's greatest development challenges. I am confident that these joint efforts will bring opportunities for further cooperation, especially as countries transition from the use of fossil fuels to clean energy. This will translate into enormous benefits for the region. Once again, allow me to express my sincere thanks to all the participants who are joining the forum from around the globe. I wish you a productive discussion on these important energy issues. Thank you very much.
Большое спасибо.
Thank you very much. As you can see, the regional cooperation is one of the most important components of our assistance to the countries in Central Asia. And for that, we prepared a little video about the power resources that exist, energy resources that exist in different countries, and advantages that our countries have if they use and cooperate in a proper and effective and efficient manner in the region. Can you please put on the video? Countries in Central Asia have great potential to produce power energy by having traditional sources such as coal, oil, and gas, along with renewable energies such as hydro, wind, and solar energies. Historically, the national energy systems of the 5 Central Asian countries were interrelated and operated as one centralized Central Asian energy system. But in the early 90s, the independent countries of Central Asia took the direction of energy self-sufficiency by reducing the scope of regional cooperation. Since 2014, we started seeing the weaknesses of integration processes. In 2018, the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, started providing assistance in creating a regional market of power energy in Central Asia, and that would provide for long-term energy security and economic growth. By the end of 2019, 4 countries started working together with USAID on creating a regional market for electrical energy. Since that time, the countries have been working together on dealing with legal and technical issues required for the partnership. USAID has assisted in developing a roadmap which will contribute to providing energy safety, attracting investments, upgrades of energy systems, and increase of exports of energy to South Asia. This regional partnership will strengthen the economic development of the region and lead to creation of highly paid jobs. In the future, prices for energy will be defined by the competition, by reducing costs for consumers at the same time and increasing reliability of our supply, thanks to the integrated regional energy market in Central Asia. Thank you. When we talk about rational and regional cooperation, a great attention is paid to the coordinating agency that should coordinate and manage to some extent and demonstrate to our countries a way to cooperate, a proper way of cooperating, the proper way of using energy resources. And for that, I would like to turn the floor to the director of the Regional Coordination Dispatch Center, Mr. Shamsiev. Mr. Shamsiev is has a PhD, and he was a professor at the Tashkent State University. He worked at the Ministry of Energy and Electrification of Uzbekistan, and since 2008, he's been a chief operator and for the number of years the director of the Regional Dispatch Center, the Coordinating Center of Energy in Tashkent. This center plays an important role in coordinating monitoring of the operations of energy systems in Central Asia. And Mr. Shamsiev has a little presentation about overcoming barriers and obstacles and problems and challenges in integrating the energy systems of Central Asia. The floor is yours. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Can you see the screen? We can see you on the screen. I tried to share my screen. Here we go. We can see your presentation right now. I am really glad to be able to take a part in this conference, in this forum. Since I'm limited, I was hoping to have a very extensive presentation, but since I'm limited on time, I'll be very quick. Ways to expand regional trade in energy in Central Asia. Our region has a surplus, and we're looking for ways to export energy or power, and which changes we have to do both in the infrastructure and in generation types. And so we're basically looking into how we should develop in the future. Central Asia includes power supply systems on the south of Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Kyrgyzstan. And at this stage, Tajikistan is at the stage of joining the network, and Turkmenistan system, when it was working separately from Iran, they did apply to be included. But as we found out recently, Turkmenistan is working with Iran. They started working again with Iran. This slide shows the main areas that I'm going to discuss today. So I'm not going to read through them. And I'm going to start with the very first one, which is the upgrades of transboundary networks and systems, both regional and transboundary. Expansion of regional trade requires strengthening of transboundary networks and links and the restoration of those that were interrupted in the past. And strengthening implies construction of new lines of supply, and restoration implies that we're currently working on, and we're starting to restore in the Tajik system. The countries have approved on the schedule of restoring, and not just old lines, but also we're building a new line connecting these two between Karakumskaya and Tajikistan and Sarydaryanskaya. And with this link, we will be able to have a circuit of 5 kilowatts that would improve the supply of not just reliability of the systems, not just in Tajikistan and Uzbekistan, but also on the possibility of generating more energy and for trade, which will have a very good impact on the Afghanistani system, which is bordering both of our systems. It's very close to both of our systems. The next area is another potential participant is Turkmen Energy power system, which has only one link so far with our system, which is 512 Serdar Karakul. currently, this link is Turkmenistan is using these links to feed the power generated at the Mari power station. The rest of the system is using this 500 kilowatt line and its own internal line, and in parallel they're working with the Iranian energy system using the 220 line. And the most important thing that Turkmenistan needs to decide to be able to work with us in parallel is to deal with organizational and technical issues, and we've been talking about that. And that would be signing the work on the parallel operations, deal with some technical issues, ordering a design, and these are not important things. The most important thing is Turkmenistan needs to make a decision whether they're going to be working with us or with Iran, and that will determine the follow-up schedule or scheme. I think, and we believe that it would be much proper to actually work with the systems of the Central Asia, whereas the Iran, through this constant current station, they would still have to build it, because both energy systems, both the one in Iran and in Turkmen, they're building their own line, 400 kilowatt lines, and no, Turkmenistan is building a 5 kilowatt line, and the way to connect them, this would be the way to connect them, and the most feasible way, based on the global experience, is this constant current rate where they connect two different classes of two different currents in one. So the next aspect I would like to discuss is the water and water energy issues. The experience of tying water and energy problems within the government-to-government agreements, which used to be signed, or multilateral government agreements, and then we move to bilateral government-to-government agreements. These GOG agreements determined a lot of challenges in both signing those agreements, because it used to take a long time. There were a lot of approvals that had to be collected, as well as on the implementation stage, when one party performs on its obligations, whereas the other one doesn't perform on their obligations completely. And particularly ineffective those government-to-government agreements are in low water and high water areas, areas that require higher coordination between the countries in dealing with water and energy issues. That's why we believe that we have to find a comprehensive solution for this problem. And we believe that we have to consider two aspects: water and power, electrical power, which used to be accounted for and considered, or what used to be considered in those agreements were gas issues, oil issues, or cleaning riverbeds, etc. But that needs to be moved aside now, and we have to look at how much water we have and how much energy and power we have. Another important aspect is, given the construction of new hydropower stations recently, and the Toktogunskaya gas, which is the acting one right now, which are being constructed and will be constructed and will regulate the river flows and determine the small flow or high flow rivers. It would be feasible for the countries in the region to participate in the construction of such large hydro facilities. And on the one hand, and on the other hand, we have to sign some sort of an agreement, a document that would regulate, or these countries would have to sign it to regulate their legal obligations for the exploitation of such facilities. The next issue is the issue of transits of power and energy. The regional trade implies not just creation of a very diverse electrical system, but it also provides for the transparent, it requires a transparent mechanism to regulate the transit of power. And the transit is the same as the in the energy fraction, and this is the the energy charter, and the charter states that's a transit through the territory of another state. For us, the definition is using the electrical lines of one's using electrical grids of one state aimed to be delivered to a country, to a third country, or between 2 points in within one state. We did develop at the time methodology for transit methodology in the early 90s, and in 2000s, since 2000s, this methodology has not been changed, and because it has to be brought in compliance with the current existing electrical scheme, we were ordered, or there was a working group that was asked to develop a new methodology, a transit methodology. We did complete this work. We prepared two projects, two drafts, and one is an upgrade of the existing methodology, or revisions, update of the existing methodology, and the second one is adaptation of the European model. And we did try to do it in the past, but we did fail it at that time because we didn't account for the specifics of the quality of the circuits, because transportation on the grids was not paid for, and if we move it from one part to the other part within one grid, that transit was not paid. And these issues have been accounted in the current methodology, and a week from now we're going to have a coordinating committee meeting where we're going to report on the results of both. So we're going to present both of these methodologies that we developed on transit. And one more peculiarity is that we developed a unified approach to setting tariffs for power transits, but instead of dealing with each country independently and agreeing on tariffs, we developed the methodology of unified transit tariff, which should be adopted. If it's adopted, it would be very good for all of us. In addition to that, we also provide other services, which is services and regulations of frequency and capacity. In Central Asia, the trade comes in the form of wholesale delivery agreements from one country to another, based on some agreed upon tariffs. The differentiated tariffs, unfortunately, have not been introduced in this region. That's why, because we're lacking technical facilities to use differentiated tariffs, and that's why we don't use that in transboundary trade. But this aspect, we try to account for it indirectly in our regulation methodology, where the demand of different demands and different hours is accounted for in the form of providing services by one service, or reserves by one system, in order to compensate disbalances in another grid when that grid needs that missing capacity, and that could be both on the upload and on the offload side. There is a methodology on regulating methodology that we use as a basis to sign agreements, but unfortunately, there are only two agreements between the Uzbek and Kazakhstani grids that exist right now. But now we have to sign. All energy systems have to sign agreements like that. So there is an urgent need to do that, and otherwise, we will have difficult times working in the future. Despite the fact that we have this methodology, it's not complete from the standpoint of the use of implementation of the capacity reserves. The thing is that the regulation methodology, if the energy system orders a certain capacity and then this capacity is provided, then the demanded reserve did take place, so this reserve is paid for. And the fact that the energy system has to hold this reserve, and if nobody is asking for this reserve, it's not going to get paid for. This moment, or this aspect, has not been accounted for, worked out. And we believe that for for further development of trade in the region, we have to develop reserve trade and We have to develop a full-scale and full-fledged market of capacity reserves, which would stimulate these energy systems that have the possibility to provide services like that, to develop a relative generation of power and build power stations that would be required for that. The next issue is I was having some troubles with the connection. Yes, we lost you for a while, for a couple of last minutes, just a couple of seconds. Oh, sorry, sentences. All right, so the disbalances that will be caused by, that will be compensated by solar power stations. This is the main concern of our region because we have great plans to build solar power stations, but Uzbekistan plans to build from 3 to 5 gigawatt power stations. The thing is that what are we going to do in evening times when the sun's setting, and where are we going to take the necessary capacity to reach the required capacity? And the world experience demonstrates that this problem can be solved not by building accumulators, power accumulators, or building mobile turbine facilities. The problem for us is that we need to fully upgrade the parallel area, which is a gas transportation system. It has to be ready to provide the required amount of gas to make sure that thermal power stations can raise up the required amount of capacity, which would be quite significant in gigawatt capacities.
Where should we send our energy? So one route has been developed already. Gas project up to 2,000 megawatts to Southeast Asia. In the near future, we will be supplying. This project is at the stage of implementation, and certain construction that's started already. But which problems do we encounter or see? The trade agreements which do exist between countries on acceptance and supplying of the energy for high water years, they will be fine, but when during the drought there might be problems. So the suppliers should think through this issue together with their colleagues, countries which has the thermal generation, accumulation, in order to resolve the issue of supply to Tajikistan and Afghanistan. Another direction towards Russia. So we looked at this, and we can see that we have great problems with north-south of Kazakhstan, especially the system towards our energy system. So the transit is working at its maximum power, maximum load, and the further increase of the flow towards our country is not possible. Backwards to Russia, there are problems on adaptation of energy systems to a Russian power market or energy market, and there are some problems here which without resolution or finding a solution will not be promising. Sorry. Another area of work direction is towards China. Take into consideration that the fact that we will generate a lot of power in the near future, we'll have to sell it somewhere. So let's look at it from the technical point of view, which direction we can supply energy to. So towards China, it's not parallel work is not possible. So either we actually construct the constant current lines. I mean, like the bordering oblasts of China with Kazakhstan, like Xinjiang, Uyghur district. Another direction, if the insert of constant current is possible with Turkmenistan. Turkmenistan can be an energy hub which will connect Central Asia and Iran and other energy systems which could be worked with Turkey, Armenia, Georgia. We will be able to reach Caucasian, theoretically can reach Caucasian region. As a system engineer, you know, I am interested in the fact that we can use like the time zones, different time zones, you know, that, for example, for us, you know, the peak is down, but it only comes to the southern countries. So what we cannot use effectively, this time zones factor cannot be used for other places, but for those countries it can be used. Iran has they consume maximum during summer, and for us it's vice versa. That is why we can actually supply big volumes of power. We can actually supply during summer. And all the other Caucasian region. I didn't have enough time. I had to cut my presentation. This is all I wanted to tell you. Thank you. Medil Amanovich, thank you very much for your presentation. We have a little time and we have questions from the audience on your presentation. There is a question in terms of Uzbekistan. Will joint energy system, Central Asian energy system, cover demand, winter demand in Uzbekistan? And why is it that all our countries have access of energy and Uzbekistan has lack of energy? I touched this issue a little bit. So gas transportation system, we feel the problems. Yesterday we had a snow, and so the pressure in the pipelines went down. And although there are generating capabilities at the stations, but there's not enough gas because of the pressure, atmospheric pressure. And so we proposed to our council to look at sort of flexible gas generation in order to tie these two sectors together. So for them not to work separately, independently of each other, but mutually in either like organized like a joint management or something like that. So from this point of view, is a maximum coverage depends on the energy system by itself. It has to undertake the measures on balancing of power generation. And if it's not working, then you hope for the neighbor's hope. And if it doesn't work, then there is an old, well-tested method is limiting consumption. Another question, which methods of deficit decrease of consumption, you know, is acceptable for our region? Gas generation or power accumulation, or what is acceptable for our region? How can we overcome this problem? As for gas, we do see that even now our operational regimes, if we can install a gas equipment, but they will not be able to resolve systematic issues. So in 2-3 hours, you will have to increase capacity on a very high level. And if you do not prepare gas pressure systems, gas compression systems, and gas accumulating tanks, increase the number of gas holders, and maybe use of the liquid gas. It's one side of the issue. And in terms of the fuel, actually. But if we talk about just the other side, you know, is the it's accumulators. So power has to be rearranged, you know, from the place where there is excess power to where it is lack of energy. And I think that the highest potential is our neighbors who have the hydropower stations. So we just should build not just simple hydropower stations, but hydropower energy accumulator stations. And another option during recent years, it was quite an interesting thing, is just dry stations, is the electrogravitation. Electrochemical accumulation is a good thing, but it's expensive because every year there is a degradation of power and of these accumulators, and they have to be renewed all the time, and invest funds into support of the systems. Thank you very much for your answers, and your answers lead to more questions, but let other participants, panelists present. You made a very good description or brief description of the technical side of the situation, but we would like to talk about the financial side, economic, you know, how this technical cooperation can lead to the economic cooperation. So the next presentation will be done by Pedro Rubio. He's a leading specialist. He is a specialist with the great experience for 37 years and more than 25 countries, a lot of different issues, planning, distribution, regional markets. He is a leading specialist of 2 regional projects at Energy Future and the regional market, energy market. So he will present today on the expedited economic development due to development of the regional market. Pedro is on the other side of our planet or our globe, and there's a big gap in time, but he agreed to present at our panel session and make this presentation. Pedro, the floor is yours.
Спасибо. Спасибо, Sergey.
Thank you, Sergey. I will switch to presentation. Okay, hello to everyone. Thanks for joining to this panel session. There will be a short presentation to discuss strategic importance issue of regional energy market. I'm very glad for this opportunity to share my thoughts and how we can expedite economic growth of Central Asian countries due to creating, you know, of the competitive energy market. Such market is called regional energy market, Central Asian energy market, and we call it CAREM. I will, in my short presentation, I will mention this very many times, this abbreviation. My name is Pedro Rubio. I am a member of a team which helps Central Asian countries to grow capabilities on creating energy market. How can CAREM expedite economic growth of the region? That is the most important issue which I try to answer during my presentation or in my presentation. Presence of centralized platform where countries can exchange energy using different mechanisms can be important for economic growth of Central Asia. I will briefly show which benefits countries might get for regional functioning of this market and how this market can become a driver for economic development. In such countries is Central Asia with potentially fast growth. There is a very close ties between development and the energy consumption. Stronger economy of GDP growth is tied to intensification of power consumption. So industry has to grow its capacity. Trade has to reflect, the economic growth, and in total, it improves the welfare of the citizens. If we for a second forget about existing economic crisis and decrease of regional GDP this year, for example, at minus 1.7%, expected minus 0.7%, and see the speed of growth for the economies of the Central Asian countries prior to COVID pandemic, we will have better understanding of what I'm talking about. According to the World Bank data, so GDP growth in the region, it was stable around 5.7% for several years, which is quite significant. And countries responded with exact steps of strengthening energy sector, in mainly generation of energy power. And and while Central Asian countries will expand energy sector, the consumption of electricity energy consumption will grow together with the economic activity growth, and based on that, countries will be able to run, long-term planning, which they will plan for construction of new electric power stations, electric lines, substations. So that's like a circle. It's a total circle. So if within the framework of this scenario, countries will concentrate their efforts on just satisfaction of their expanding internal demands by means of construction of additional power stations, they will face with a range of serious problems. Receiving funding for construction is just one of the problems. But you have to understand that together with construction of power stations, you will have to build, power lines and substations. And you will agree that this will create fiscal or budget pressure. And the essence of my thought is that to highlight energy sufficiency on energy independency would be reasonable and profitable to develop transboundary market of energy. So this will allow to receive investments into new generating capabilities and the growth of internal demand, because you will be able to use generating capabilities of other countries. This is the joint, resource management. An organized energy market international experience shows that it's an effective instrument to help countries to use benefits of assistance to each other, So, and our team is now in the process of building the foundation for such market. How CARIEM can help the region? CARIEM will help with more effective use of the region's resources, due to the exchange of the resources, which will allow to export the excess power or energy or buy it on lower costs. It will allow to predict energy demand with the minimum expenses, which will allow countries to delay investments into new infrastructures for generation and transfer, which will allow governments to invest into other sectors of economy. And the third thing, CARIEM will help trade of excess power at a lower cost and also buy it at a lower cost. By this, increasing effectiveness of energy-generated resources of the region. CARIEM will help attract, which is very important, private investments into the energy sector in all countries, and as the consequences, it will decrease fiscal pressure on the budget, which is significantly important. And I think it's obvious that regional market can bring significant economic benefits to all countries. In 2018, USAID launched a 3-year project, technical support project for 5 Central Asian countries to assist create sustainable, reliable energy market. It is implemented by Tetra Tech, U.S. company Tetra Tech, and it's expected that Korea will improve the reliability of power supply by assisting trade. By assisting growth of sales of energy in the region, and it will become a platform for expanded regional energy market of Central Asia and South Asia. Korea will become an energy market which countries can use for organized sales platform in the region and beyond, at bilateral and multilateral level. And thanks to the regional contracts, Korea will help economic growth of all countries. Project has 3 main goals: promotion of reforms of energy sector, which has important meaning for financial sustainability of the sector, assist in creating conditions for transboundary energy exchange, and help create regional market of energy. Let's talk about the benefits. Existing experience demonstrates that the creation of energy systems and creating the regional market will provide significant economic benefits, and there are a lot of examples of that.
According to the 3 studies, the potential benefits from restoring national systems and transboundary trade. I'm talking about the reintegration of the national systems and transboundary trade with power, electrical power, can vary between $350 to $1,200 million a year, which is a significant amount of money. We can list a lot of benefits for creating a regional market, but I mentioned the most important ones, which includes increase of the economic effectiveness of the national energy sectors of all countries by means of effective use on connectivity of resources. As a positive result, the countries may reduce or delay long-term investments into the development of new generating capacities of the basic load. That will lead to a decrease of the fiscal load because the countries will be able to postpone the construction of a new energy infrastructure. The money that they will save, the governments will be able to use for the development of other sectors. Let's talk about CARIM as a driver for economic growth. In conclusion, I would like to single out 3 key issues or points at in this presentation. First of all, by taking into account economic benefits which can be generated from the involvement in the regional energy market would be in the economic interest of the region. It would be economically interested for their interest to stay away from the paradigm of the energy dependency and make a decision to reintegrate and restore the national energy systems into one interconnected regional grid. It is also important to emphasize that the ability of Central Asian countries to use the resources jointly and to use a synergy of costs can generate sizable economic benefits and the possibility to expedite the development of national economies. The international experience also shows that transboundary trade of energy with support of supported by appropriate policy and regional institutes, which is very important, is an effective tool to expedite the economic growth. So this is it for my presentation. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your presentation. We have several questions specifically for you on your subject. The first question is that you have a great experience in working on international power markets. What are the foundation of the full-fledged operations of the regional market? What has to be done here in Central Asia, in Central Asian region? Thank you. Let me illustrate it with a slide then. As in case with any other regional market, such as Nord Pool, South African Energy Pool, SAP, regional electrical energy market map, for CARIM to become transparent, open, and competitive, the region needs to focus on resolving several tasks. It's important to emphasize that some of these requirements have already been or completely or partially implemented. I mentioned some of them only, and you saw them on the screen. For the functioning of the market, we need to have the reliable physical infrastructure, transboundary lines and grids between the countries and border crossings and border substations to locate large volumes of capacity. We need adequate throughput capacity for grids on the national level as well, including upgrades of the national grids. So this is what Mr. Shansiyev was talking about. We need to coordinate national rules and technical standards to ensure minimal requirements required for simultaneous work and synchronized work of the national systems. We would also need effective international structures. We have to have laws, legal agreements, etc., and so on and so forth, and that has to be signed. And the country has to adopt the overall general energy policy, although at least a similar policy on key aspects. We need reforms in the energy sector to ensure the market development, and countries also will need to revise the existing regional rules and operating procedures of the electrical power and network code and guidelines, and work on improving them, adopting them to the current conditions. And they will also need to appoint a regional operator for CARIM, but the requirements may sound like there are a lot, and the list is quite extensive, but we have been successfully working on these issues with the region. And it's important to mention that based on the experience of other regions where similar energy markets work, CARIM's market creation is a difficult and complex process. It's not an easy process. And it requires time, and it will be implemented using a similar approach. Thank you. One of the participants in the forum is asking to provide a link to research on generating capacities on the demand for energy in each country. I think CARIM conducted and the World Bank conducted this research, and if you can, could you please post this information on the website of the forum? And I also have a question that I'd like to raise. So, okay, you mentioned about the main blocks that may lay the foundation of the local power or energy market. Can you describe the steps that we should undertake to move towards that market, and maybe show us some time scale? How much time do we need to achieve that goal? So let me illustrate it with a slide again. Given the existing disproportion between the energy systems in the countries of Central Asia, a regional market has to be introduced gradually. And the starting point would be the increase of this of a short-term and a medium-term trade based on the agreements, and then followed up by expansion of trade until a functioning and full-scale energy stock exchange is created. So the market model that we're proposing will be implemented in 4 stages. The first stage is when we help countries to go back to the coordinated and parallel work of the national systems of power supply, so that 5 systems can work again as one in full sync as they did during the Soviet time. And we already have signed agreements which need to be revised and expanded. Tajikistan and Turkmenistan have not integrated into the regional system, but we realize that they're already working on that. And Mr. Shansiyev mentioned that as well. When they all work in sync, all national systems work in sync, they will be able not just to carry out trade of power, but it will also provide support to each other during emergency situations in the system. At the same time, the region will create the necessary conditions that will give each country an impetus to increase bilateral trade by means of buying energy, not in case of its deficit, which is very important to emphasize, but also when imports are cheaper than their own production. And this is the whole point of sustainability, and the idea is that existing bilateral transactions based on the short-term and medium-term forward agreements, they will be implemented, but the scale or the scope of energy the amount of energy will have to be increased. These bilateral agreements will come in a form of financial contracts, which implies that it's going to be paid in money terms or water transactions, which would be the in-kind redemptions. And in the future, the contracts will be standardized. And during the first phase, the CARIM will introduce a mechanism that will allow for national energy systems to exchange balancing electrical energy. A second stage would create a spot market that will be set up similarly to the day forward markets. And within this market, these countries will be able to trade power based on applications applications for sell and offer and buy until the actual energy is supplied. As you understand, for that, we need to appoint an operator of the regional market to manage those transactions. The third stage will create the real-time market and auxiliary services market. And at the last stage, the countries will move towards the modern and competitive regional energy market, and this is the exchange that I was mentioning earlier. And the first 2 stages can be implemented in the medium term, as we believe, and based on their complexity. And based on their complexity, the last 2 stages will take more time, and we believe that the market will be operating fully as it was envisioned by 2027. And this will depend on the support that this undertaking will receive from the national governments. And it's important to note that together with the governments of the Central Asian countries, USA developed the roadmap and the action plan to manage the implementation processes for CARIM as well. There's also a preliminary schedule of market creation. This roadmap, I don't have time right now, but I can show it to you on the screen. But this roadmap has officially been approved by all the countries that stated about their willingness to support the introduction of the internal regional energy market, including donors and international organizations have also expressed their support. Thank you very much, Pedro. I see that we have a lot more questions are coming into the Q&A box, but we have to move on. And if we can, After the third presentation, if we have time after the third presentation, we will go back to this discussion and ask you a question. Just a brief comment. Will USAID open an office in Uzbekistan? I should say that yes, we're working on that. And we've already taken a number of steps to get an approval and permission to open the office in Uzbekistan, and soon we will be opening the office there. And let's move on to the next presentation, which will be made by Armen Azurmanyan. He is a chief of party on two projects. One of them is Power of the Future, and the second one is the regional electricity market project. So he has a vast experience of working in different countries and different areas. And for us, he's going to present today. In his presentation, he's going to talk about the possibilities of use of development of renewable energies in Central Asia. Thank you very much, Sergey. Can you hear me well, and can you see the presentation? Yes, we can hear you and see the presentation. Just, it's not full screen. Can you make it full screen? Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Sergey. Good afternoon, dear colleagues, and thank you for the possibility to present the incomprehensible or very enormous subject in just several minutes. And I'm going to be talking about the possibility of developing renewable energies in Central Asia. And as you understand, all 5 countries are at different stages of development. They have different objectives in terms of development of renewables. And I will try to quickly go through the possibilities and the status of development of renewables in the region. At this stage, the leader in development of renewables in Central Asia is Kazakhstan. And I'm not saying that, mentioning at this stage, because the dynamics of development is different for different countries. And when we talk about other countries, I will also talk about that. So let's go back to Kazakhstan. As you can see, Kazakhstan in 2013 announced about a very aggressive objective of development of renewable energy. By 2020, 3% of generation. By 2025, that would be an interim result, 6%. By 2030, it would be 10%, and by 2050, 50% of alternative energies. Alternative energies, according to Kazakhstan's terminology, includes nuclear energy, which development is being discussed, but is under a big question. The renewable energy today is being implemented, is under development currently in Kazakhstan, and I should say that this is a success story. It's not an absolute success, but the progress and development that Kazakhstan has demonstrated so far is considered success. As for electricity, 81% of electricity in Kazakhstan is generated from by-coal thermal stations, about 9% hydropower stations, 1.3% as of the beginning of the year were renewable energies, and 8.5% gas. Why is this important? Why is this generation structure important? It determines the flexibility of the system and the extent to which it is ready to accept and develop the renewable energy. Unfortunately, there's a lot of thermal stations in Kazakhstan using obsolete technologies. These are very old, outdated stations that were built in the 60s and 70s of the last century, and they were designed to work it was an even schedule and smoothless schedule and working on the thermal load. And these stations cannot maneuver, they cannot provide a flexibility which is needed to develop renewable energy. Nonetheless, the start of the renewable energy development in Kazakhstan was took place. Conditions allowed for small amounts to generate small amounts without a significant pressure on the system. And today we see in Kazakhstan as of June of this year, we had more than 1,400 megawatts of installed capacities of wind and solar power stations. For Kazakhstan, in order to develop renewable energies, created institutional and legal framework, and continues to be developed. There are some gaps that need to be bridged, but they were recognized by the community of investors and investments. We started seeing investments in this area. And it's important to note here that in order to reduce risks or eliminate them completely for investors, the unified buyer or procurer of renewable energy was created in Kazakhstan. An agreement to procure electricity was developed and introduced that guaranteed the complete buyout of electricity. And complete is in quotes because it's not always complete, because it's for 15 years. It's less than in Europe or in other neighboring countries, but it's still enough and sufficient for investments to start flowing in. We developed standard requirements for connecting renewable energies to the grid. Indexation of tariffs was adopted. Today, the tariffs for renewable energies is indexed by 70% relative to the dollar, and 30% is internal inflation. They are released from the services of transfer of electricity. There is a priority dispatching that is ensured, and I should mention here that these are not take or pay. These are priority dispatching where, for example, if conditions are reliable and safe, the energy system can work reliably and safe, then the renewable source will be dispatched. And if there are technical limitations, then it will be limited. And financial consequences, there are no financial consequences for investor or the buyer.
Also, investment priorities were introduced during development and construction of renewable energy sources. That is tax preferences and other preferences. This complex of measures, which was developed with active participation of USAID, the Energy of Future, created significant interest for investors, and method of attracting investments, which was adopted in Kazakhstan with assistance or under consultations of USAID, also was accepted by auction sales. So the sales did happen in 1919, and then 2020 they just finished. They are not reflected yet here. Some of the auctions, all of the auctions to 2020 was successfully completed. We must say that USAID provided full support on development of methodology, rules, software support for the IT platform, transparency during the auction organization, which caused a very positive response on behalf of investors. At auction, 1,200 megawatts were placed, and the auction for more than 1,000 megawatts were closed. Contracts were signed. 158 companies from 12 countries participated. 42 companies won the auction, from all over the world, and they signed the contracts. with the Financial Procurement Office for 15 years. During auctions, it's very important to say that the auctions provided significant decrease of initial tariffs from which sales had started, auction had started. So for wind by 44%, sun by 46%, and hydro stations by 25%. So low tariffs for these resources in 2018 and 19, which we saw in Kazakhstan, were the lowest were 4.6 for wind, 3.3 cents for sun, and hydropower is 3.4 cents. We can say that globally at the auctions, significantly lower tariffs were shown at the auction. That is true, but we have to understand that the Kazakhstani process and it's the beginning, it's a new market for investors. Kazakhstan does not provide state warranties or guarantees, which is important for investors. There is certain risk for investors here, and there is a space for improvement of these indicators, and I'm sure that in future we will reach them. Next, important player on renewable energy sources player is Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan also announced its renewable energy sources program, and we must say that drivers for Uzbekistan are not only decrease of emissions and its obligations on various agreements, like in Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan has no deficiency of energy, neither during winter or summer. 14,000 megawatt is the peak, is the winter peak, with available 18,000 and 20,000 existing megawatts. In Uzbekistan, we witness, as we mentioned, certain deficit of energy. So the gas system and fuel source was unreliable in Uzbekistan, and this decision was made to develop a new generating capabilities, including renewable sources and power station, atomic power stations. So they adopted the program to build commercial atomic power station. So the plan is quite aggressive for renewable energy sources. By 2030, Uzbekistan plans to bring generation from renewable energy sources up to 20%. If you remember, Kazakhstan only 10%. And it's inevitable that Uzbekistan has more flexibility, take into consideration the capabilities of the gas system, same issues in terms of balance and rebalancing of the system. It requires further development, discussion, and making decisions to strengthen significant flexibility of the gas system, additional capabilities construction. There should be a development program developed which takes into consideration the limitations of the system, which provides integration and flexibility of renewable energy sources. In this regard, USAID assists both to Kazakhstani engineers and partners and Uzbek engineers and partners. We perform systematic analysis to define the measures which has to be undertaken to implement these aggressive programs for the renewable energy sources. I must say here it must be said that besides these measures, effort-consuming measures, it's necessary to change the management system of both systems. they should switch to the short period sort of base. They should introduce 1 hour schedule. They should introduce prediction, planning, providing more precise information for adjusting regimes of power supply in order to avoid the balance unreliability of the system. So this slide, so Uzbekistan developed a detailed plan of commissioning of renewable energy sources. So it has to do with both energy, wind, and hydro. So they plan 3,000 sun. I don't see the numbers on the screen, so I have to look it up. You can go further, we are a little bit late, so don't worry, you don't have to give the exact. The main differences in development and introduction of the plan, Uzbekistan developed a long-term development programs. In Kazakhstan, they just defined, the goals, but they did not define the annual volumes, which creates certain problems for investors in terms of planning and implementation of their obligations. Uzbekistan has adopted more strict rules on providing investors. It's a state guarantee, take or pay. In Uzbekistan, conditions for investors at this stage are better. Kyrgyz Republic, there is no complex plan for the renewable energy sources. 77% of generation is hydropower stations. A very flexible energy system. Nevertheless, it sort of used its resource. In recent years, we see that the Kyrgyz energy system is demonstrates a deficiency. They have to buy energy from other countries. The development paradigm of capabilities is hydro energy development. Kambarata 1 and 2, very good projects. Naren Cascade. Nevertheless, development of the solar energy in the short-term and medium-term perspective could be significant progress because system is flexible and it can accept significant volumes of solar energy. But that's an issue of strategy, and we are working with our Kyrgyz colleagues. Turkmenistan. We don't even have how much and of what is generated from different sources, because there would be one color pie, because they have gas, they have significant, it's a higher, the demand is much lower than supply, and the plans for the export of gas energy is in the process of negotiation. And as Mr. Shamsiyev mentioned, Turkmenistan is looking for routes of export into Iran, and it's working out for them, So renewable energy sources problem is very localized. It is considered at the level of remote settlements. It is not a big problem, for them. And the Tajikistan 92 is hydropower. And again, tariffs for energy are low. Tajikistan is fully covering, both seasonal loads, so it's 100% coverage, and also release of water, during summertime, and Kazatish is the project which they consider as a solution for this problem. And development of renewable energy sources is a solution for remote areas and remotely located villages. This is all I wanted to share in terms of capabilities for development in Central Asian region. Thank you very much, Armen, for a very detailed presentation. We have several questions, and I would like to put them in one. We know their ambitious plan, as you mentioned or listed. Is Uzbekistan ready to implement their plans? How do laws of renewable energy sources comply with these ambitions and these great plans on the renewable energy sources in Kazakhstan? How implementation of these plans can influence regional energy system? Thank you very much for your question, Sergey. So planning and implementation of renewable energy sources in Uzbekistan. Yes, the goals have been developed, but there were no serious scientific research done. This is what we're in the process of doing, both in Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. Hopefully, within the next 6 months, we will see the answers on the size of the problem, how we can resolve. And this task is in the process of its discussion. It will be provided by the State Institute and operator of energy lines. As for the regional issues, it's inevitable that if each country will not resolve the issue of balancing, that everything will be placed on the system ties, and it will all go to Russia, because it works with the uniform Russian system. So this ties, these lines going to Russia. It undergoes big problems because the peaks goes up to 18,200 megawatts. At the same time, the contract limits it to 120 megawatts. And the more renewable energy sources, without resolving the issues of flexibility and balance of Central Asian countries, the more, the bigger the scissors will be at the border. And very soon we'll reach either technical maximum or Russian energy system impact will be so big that it will be disconnected. So with development of the renewable energy sources, we have to resolve the balancing problem. We have to use internal regional resources, and what Pedro was mentioning during the real-time market, all of those things are directed towards providing balanced work of energy systems in Central Asia. Okay. Thank you. There were some other questions which can be sort of joined into one question, and it's a question to Pedro. It's about subsidizing and cross-subsidizing. We know that some countries subsidize renewable energy, some countries subsidize, fossil energy, some countries subsidize citizens in terms of energy consumption. How all these issues are taken into consideration in regional cooperation? Thank you, Sergey. Yes, all these things are taken into consideration. Well, when there is a subsidized market, they do exist. But it is expected that while the market develops, they will decrease subsidizing, this sector. In Central Asian countries, there is a weak correlation between the production cost of energy and tariffs for final consumer. Currently, we implement a range of efforts so the market can function properly after it has been launched. And with this regard, we're working with the national energy institutions to help improve financial welfare and sustainability of energy sector of all countries. With this purpose, we develop financial models for defining the market price of generation and energy transfer at the wholesale market, which in its turn will help define tariffs to cover expenses, which will cover expenses. So existing market and assumption that the governments will want to make the energy markets attractable for private investments. The task for them would be in reconsidering, revising whom they should subsidize, which aspects of expenses should be subsidized, and how much they should be subsidized. Thank you. A question for Armen. You said that Kazakhstan has ambitious plans and Kazakhstan is a leader and it's moving really fast forward, but it's not a real ideal picture. Which two, three main barriers, which are the obstacles for Kazakhstan moving forward? Of course, Kazakhstan had shown very good start. And because of a very fast and beautiful solution, they decided to resolve the issue of a uniform or a single buyer and covered the demand. But in a long-term perspective, we see that financial sustainability is not sufficient. And if you sign a contract for 15, and very soon it will be 20 years, investors might see significant risks for such perspectives. And for that, you need serious support of government. Government should provide backup for financial center if the situation will happen when financial resources will become insufficient. Another problem is a long-term planning.
I mentioned that already. There is no approved long-term development plan that would be regional for Kazakhstan and technological. Which capacities and where and what is the best solution to achieve set objectives? We prepared a plan for Kazakhstan like that was presented to the government as part of the USAID project. We are conducting workshops, and I hope that this instrument or this tool will allow making decisions like that. It will be adopted and used in Kazakhstan in the future to achieve, well, first to develop the policy, set objectives, and achieving those objectives. Thank you, Armen. We are nearing the end of our panel discussion, and of course, we still have a lot of questions about renewable energy, sources of energy. If countries build renewable sources, and that affects not just on their national system, but also the regional system. It has to be coordinated with the neighbors. How could it be coordinated? You can either inform them or maybe come to some mutual agreements as to where to build and how much to build. And that pertains not just to renewable energies, but it also has to do with rehabilitation of regenerating facilities. If one country is upgrading its grids and that has a positive impact on other countries and on the region in general, then maybe the question could be how other countries can be involved in upgrading certain grids or capacities or facilities in a given country, in that particular country. Or co-finance or compensate to a certain extent these expenses or costs. So questions about subsidies, economic partnership, balancing, regulations. There are a lot of questions that arise, and I believe that this is not the last session, not our last discussion. And I would like to thank all the participants that participated in and presented today, answered questions of our participants. And with that, I would like to conclude our session. Thank you all. Have a good night and see you soon. Thank you all. Goodbye.